Welcome to Build Strong Habits podcast channel. This is an audio podcast, so take your eyes off the screen, sit back, relax, and listen.
Ready to unlock some creative superpower.
I like it.
We've all heard the story, right? Newton just chilling under an apple tree, bonk. Inspiration strikes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Kaboom, gravity. Ultimate Eureka moment.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that's kind of a creativity myth?
Okay.
And what if busting that myth is actually the key to unlocking your own creative potential?
Interesting.
You know that feeling we all get sometimes, like, ugh, I'm just not the creative type. Well, get ready for some serious myth busting and some mind expanding, because today we're diving deep into the real science of creativity.
I love it. Let's dive in.
I'm excited about this one.
That Apple story, it really is a great example of how we misunderstand creativity.
Right.
We think it's about these sudden flashes of brilliance, but Newton actually spent decades wrestling with these ideas. Creativity is way more about the journey than the destination.
So not all just waiting for that one magical apple to fall in our heads.
Not quite. And it's actually pretty encouraging when you realize that. It takes the pressure off needing to be a genius.
Right.
It opens up the possibility that we can all cultivate our own creativity.
Right, I'm all ears. What does the research actually say about how we can become more creative?
Well, there's this fascinating study by George Land.
Okay.
He looked at creativity in kids, and brace yourself for this. 98% of 5-year-olds tested as highly creative.
Wow.
But by the time they hit 25, that number drops to a measly 2%.
Wait, seriously? 98% down to 2. What is going on there?
Yeah.
Is it just part of growing up and getting, serious in adulting?
It's more about how our environments and learning experiences can sometimes squash creative thinking. And get this, during that same time period, IQ scores have actually been going up.
Really?
So we're not getting less intelligent, just less creative, which tells us something important.
That it's not about how smart we are, but something else is at play here.
Exactly. There's this idea called threshold theory, which suggests that once you hit a certain level of intelligence, personality factors become way more important for creativity than your IQ score.
Okay, that makes sense. We all know people who are super smart, but not necessarily creative and vice versa. So what are these personality factors that make the difference?
One of the biggest is having a growth mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Carol Dweck's work on this?
Yes.
It's the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work.
Right.
As opposed to a fixed mindset where you believe you're born with a certain amount of talent and that's it. You can't grow beyond that.
Ah. So if you think you're just not creative, you're way less likely to try new things or experiment or push through those inevitable challenges that come with any creative process.
Yeah, it all comes down to how you view those challenges.
Right.
With a growth mindset, you see them as opportunities to learn and grow. And let's be honest, nobody starts out amazing.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine if Van Gogh had given up after his first few messy paintings.
That's so true. It's like we're all afraid of looking bad when we try something new,
Right.
especially if it's something creative. But you're saying that embracing those messy early stages is actually crucial for creative growth.
Think about it. Every great musician had to learn their scales. Every writer had to write terrible first drafts.
Right.
It's about giving yourself permission to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn from them.
So instead of getting hung up on being perfect right out of the gate, we should focus on the process of learning and improving.
Exactly. And that's where the growth mindset comes in. Instead of praising people for being talented or gifted, which reinforces that fixed mindset, focus on praising their effort, their resilience, their willingness to learn from mistakes.
Right.
Dweck's research shows the simple shift can have a huge impact on people's motivation and their ability to overcome challenges.
This is giving me a whole new way of thinking about creativity. It's not about being born with some special talent. It's about building that talent through practice and persistence and willingness to embrace the, shall we say, less than perfect stages. But let's get practical here. Are there specific things we can do to actually boost our creative thinking?
There are tons of research-backed techniques you can start using right away. One that I find particularly fascinating is the idea of embracing constraints.
Wait, constraints, you mean like limitations. How does that help us be more creative?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But limitations can actually push us to think outside the box, to be more resourceful, to come up with truly innovative solutions.
Okay.
Remember Dr. Seuss? He wrote Green Eggs and Ham using only 50 words.
Wow.
That constraint, that limitation, sparked one of the most beloved children's books of all time.
Okay, I see what you mean. It's like having fewer resources forces you to get more creative with what you do have.
Mm.
What other strategies can we try?
Another one is simply to write more. It may sound basic, but there's real power in volume and consistency. Think about someone like James Clear. He's built a whole career around sharing his insights,
Yeah.
and he does it by sticking to a strict writing schedule. Then there's Julia Cameron and her morning pages technique.
Yes.
Just write 3 pages every morning, stream of consciousness, no editing.
So instead of waiting for inspiration to magically strike,
Yeah.
you're saying we should just get in the habit of putting words on the page, even if they're not perfect.
Exactly. The more you create, the more you exercise those creative muscles, the more opportunities you have for those sparks of brilliance to emerge.
Right.
It's about building a habit of creativity, of showing up consistently, even when you don't feel particularly inspired.
It's like Newton strolling through that orchard, giving his mind the space and time to wander and observe and make those connections.
Yeah.
Speaking of connections, is there anything we can do to, I don't know, prime the pump for those creative breakthroughs?
Absolutely. One of the best ways to spark creative thinking is to broaden your knowledge base. The more diverse your interests, the more connections you can make between seemingly unrelated ideas.
So it's not just about being an expert in one narrow field, but about exploring different disciplines, different ways of thinking, and allowing those ideas to, I don't know, cross-pollinate.
Exactly. Think of it like building a mental library with books on all sorts of topics. The more books you have, the more interesting and unexpected combinations you can come up with. It's those surprising connections that often lead to the most innovative ideas.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. Growth mindset, embracing constraints, writing consistently, and now expanding our knowledge base. It's like we're building a whole creative toolkit.
That's a great way to put it. And here's another tool for your kit. Prioritize sleep. We often sacrifice sleep in the name of productivity, but research shows that sleep deprivation can seriously hinder creative thinking.
You know, I've definitely noticed that when I'm sleep deprived, my brain just feels like it's stuck in mud. But are you saying there's actually a direct link between sleep and creativity?
Absolutely. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that even getting just 6 hours of sleep a night for 2 weeks straight can impair your mental performance as much as pulling an all-nighter.
Wow.
Our brains need that downtime to process information, make connections, and consolidate memories, all of which are crucial for creative thinking.
So maybe those all-nighters aren't so productive after all. Next time I'm feeling stuck on a project, maybe I'll swap that extra cup of coffee for a power nap.
It could be the creative boost you need. And speaking of boosts, there's also growing evidence that spending time in nature can enhance creativity.
Okay, that one makes sense to me. I always feel more relaxed and clear-headed after a walk in the park or a hike in the woods.
It's not just a feeling. One study found that backpackers experienced a 50% increase in creativity after just 4 days immersed in nature. It seems like that combination of fresh air, sunlight, and a break from our usual routines can really help those creative juices flow.
It's like hitting the reset button on our brains, giving ourselves the space to see things with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And speaking of mental states, we can't overlook the power of positive thinking.
All right, I'll admit, this one always sounds a bit woo-woo to me. But is there actual research to back up the idea that being happy makes us more creative?
There is. Positive psychology research has shown that positive emotions actually broaden our thought patterns, making us more open to new ideas and connections. It's called the broaden and build theory. Imagine your mind is like a flower. When you're feeling good, it opens up, ready to receive pollen from all sorts of different sources.
So it's not just about feeling good for the sake of feeling good. It's about how those positive emotions actually change the way our brains work, making us more receptive to new ideas.
Precisely. And on the flip side, when we're feeling stressed or anxious, our thinking tends to narrow, making it harder to see the bigger picture or come up with innovative solutions.
So cultivating a positive mindset isn't just about being happy. It's actually a strategy for boosting creativity.
Exactly. It's about creating a mental environment where creativity can flourish. And speaking of flourishing, here's another crucial piece of the puzzle that often gets overlooked. We need to ship it.
Ship it. What do you mean by that?
It means putting your work out there, sharing your creations with the world, even if they're not perfect. It's easy to get caught up in the ideation phase, to tinker endlessly with the project, but the real magic happens when we take action and share what we've created.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Mm.
It's one thing to have a great idea, but it's a whole other thing to actually bring it to life and share it with others.
Exactly. And, there's a lot of fear wrapped up in that shipping it phase. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. But the truth is, the more you create and share, the better you'll become. It's a cycle of continuous improvement. Every piece of work, whether it's a song, a painting, a business idea, or a scientific breakthrough, is a stepping stone to something even greater.
So instead of letting those fears hold us back, we need to reframe them as part of the process.
Exactly. Remember, even Newton's groundbreaking work on gravity was built on years of experimentation, refinement, and sharing his findings with the world. And that's the key takeaway here. Creativity isn't some magical ability reserved for a select few. It's a process, a journey that we can all embark on, regardless of our background or perceived talent.
It's about nurturing that innate curiosity we all had as 5-year-olds, embracing challenges, and remembering that that messy middle is where the real growth happens. But, it can still feel daunting to put yourself out there, especially when we're constantly bombarded with messages about perfection and instant success.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to remember that creativity is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about finding joy in the process, celebrating small wins, and surrounding yourself with a supportive community that encourages you to keep going, even when things get tough.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be honest, there are times when we just hit a wall, when those creative juices just aren't flowing no matter how much sleep we get or how many walks in the park we take.
Yes.
Any advice for those moments of creative block?
Creative blocks, oh, they're totally normal. Everyone experiences them from time to time. It's like hitting a wall in a video game. You need to find a new strategy or a secret passage to move forward.
So what's the secret passage for busting through a creative block? What do we do?
Sometimes, honestly, the best thing you can do is just step away from the problem for a while.
Okay.
Give your conscious mind a break. Let your subconscious do its work in the background.
Right.
Go for a walk, listen to some music, do something totally unrelated to the project that you're stuck on.
Yeah, it's like that saying, sleep on it. Sometimes the solution just pops into your head when you least expect it.
Exactly. And when you do come back to the project, try approaching it from a different angle.
Okay.
If you're a writer, maybe try switching from your laptop to a notebook and pen. Or if you're a musician, maybe experiment with a new instrument or a different genre.
Right.
Shaking things up can sometimes help to just jumpstart those creative sparks.
So it's about getting out of that rut, that fixed way of thinking, and opening ourselves up to new possibilities.
Yeah,
Kind of like embracing those constraints that we talked about earlier.
exactly. Constraints aren't just about limitations, they're about pushing us to think differently,
Right.
to find creative solutions within a set of parameters.
Right.
And sometimes that's exactly what we need to break through a creative block.
This is making me think back to that Newton story again. We started by talking about how it's kind of a myth, that idea of instant inspiration striking like a bolt of lightning. But now I'm seeing it in a whole new light.
Oh, how so?
Well, even though the apple falling on his head may not have been the sole source of his breakthrough, it was still a catalyst. It was a moment that sparked a whole chain of thought and experimentation and ultimately those groundbreaking discoveries.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like the apple was a constraint, a challenge that forced him to kind of re-examine his assumptions and ultimately led him to a revolutionary new understanding of the universe.
And maybe that's the real takeaway here. Creativity isn't just about having those brilliant ideas. It's about how we respond to those sparks of inspiration, those challenges, those constraints, and turn them into something truly remarkable.
Beautifully said. And remember, while we may not all discover a force of nature like gravity, we each have the potential to create something meaningful, something that resonates far beyond ourselves.
So to our listener, if you're feeling stuck, if you're doubting your creative abilities, remember this. Newton's apple might have fallen in an instant, but the ripples of his work are still being felt centuries later. You have that same potential within you. Nurture your curiosity, embrace challenges, and never stop exploring the vast landscape of your own creative mind. You might just surprise yourself with what you discover.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Build Strong Habits. Let us know in the comments how you feel about it and what topics you'd love to hear next. Always remember, we're here to build strong habits together.